any investor, immigrant or not, could just pick up and just introduce a new product, a new brand. As long as they know how to run with that business, I mean, I think they could have success.
And then later on, now you see it in every corner. And it's just crazy how things can just become franchises in no time. If they hired you as their attorney, what would you have done differently to protect them?
That's when venture capital start, right? Well, you have a new idea, a new concept, or something that maybe does not have a market presence yet. Okay. And then, you know, these guys are saying, you know what, you're right. There'll be a need for your product or service in the marketplace. We'll roll the dice on you.
So it's the whole idea is about convenience, and the more we do things that is more convenient for people. I think the more business ideas we would have, just the execution matters a lot too, which I believe always needs a business attorney, I think. Hi everyone, welcome to Lawyers Uncensored. Again, I'm Leo, who is my co-host here, and we're going to be talking about business in America and multiple different interesting topics this episode. Hey Leo, how are you?
Great, man. Great. Another Friday night.
Yeah.
Couldn't think of a better place to be than here.
Yeah, me too. So did you know that Chobani's yogurt is actually made by a businessman, an entrepreneur who purchased like a company? And do you know about this story? Can you tell me more about it?
Well, I don't know much about him other than the fact that I read a story that he actually purchased a Kraft Foods, got out of the yogurt business. And this guy somehow leveraged for like 10 cents on the dollar buying these state-of-the-art yogurt factories because Kraft couldn't figure out how to make yogurt and how to keep up with the market.
You know what demand. I read about this story? It was he came from Turkey. He was an immigrant and he was actually a refugee. And he tasted the yogurt in the US and he didn't like it, so he decided to make yogurt the same way he tasted it back in his country, which is Turkey. And that's why he was so inspired to get the loan and to jump in this factory and buy this factory and make the yogurt. But like, what happened? How did he become successful? And what do you do to actually get some kind of loans?
Yeah, I mean, look, if there's so much opportunity in this country where like there are plants and operating around the country where anybody that has a way of, doing something better that's more up to date, like, yogurt, like, hey, like everybody eats Greek yogurt now, but back in the day, he had to take a risk and he didn't know if it was like, but he was smart enough to know that people would like it. Right. So I think that there's so many underutilized assets across the United States where they're just sitting there fallow. No one's running them, and that you could just, any investor, immigrant, or not, could just pick up and just introduce a new product, a new brand. As long as they know how to run with that business, I mean, I think they could have success. And then we'd have like this guy, 10 cents on the dollar capital investment. Amazing. I think it's really amazing.
Yeah, I think it's all about having an idea or seeing something happening somewhere else in the world or even in the US. Like sometimes you borrow an idea from one state and try to apply it across the US. Famous restaurants and franchises and stuff like that usually starts as just a single shop in one state and then it spreads all over.
Yeah, like so many people nowadays get patents on stuff that are utility patents, application patents, like, that are not even, they're just derivatives of the existing patents that already exist, but they've improved on it.
Yeah.
So they basically leverage that and they get their own, independent patents for those things. So I think it's like, it's just crazy. Like you see something that needs attention, you focus on addressing that need, and you have a great chance of being successful.
Yeah, it's interesting because now when you were speaking, it was actually getting in my head images of KFC and all of that. Like the guy just like set up one restaurant in one state. And then later on, now you see it in every corner. And it's just crazy how things can just become franchises in no time.
Yeah. Well, and that's the other thing I'm going to tell you, because that's a topic unto itself.
Yeah.
Topic unto itself. Like, it's never too late to launch your idea. I mean, the Colonel Sanders was literally like, I think 65 or 66 when he started his venture. And basically, took his wife's recipe and sold it out of a gas station, out of a,
Wow.
yeah, it's 65, right?
Yeah,
Great,
yeah,
crazy,
it's
right?
crazy, yeah.
He didn't retire 75, but this is, I mean, it's funny you touch upon that subject because it's kind of like, opportunity lays all the time, yeah.
And there's no age for opportunity.
There is no age for opportunity. I actually met this past weekend in New York, this lady who discovered that she had a voice, a singing voice. And she was begrudgingly said to her friend, "How am I going to go to singing classes, whatever?" Discover her singing voice. And I'm going to tell you in a second, all the age here thing. And she said, "Hey, look, my shows are sold out for a year. So I'd love to have you come, but I can't even get my own family in the shows." And I turned to her and I said, "What age did you discover?" Because now I was really curious.
She was singing in the shower, probably.
Huh?
Was she singing in the shower? Like
No. No, she actually went to singing classes.
Oh, okay.
I said, "What age did you discover your singing voice?" And she said, 75.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I looked at her and I was really then stunned, right, by the whole thing about it, because the whole age thing is like a big thing. And I said to her, "And how old are you now?" And she says, 90.
What the
And
hell?
your shows are sold out for a year. And first of all,
she's a 90-year-old singing on stage for audience.
What audience, or her shows are sold out for a year.
And she can't get her family to attend her show.
Their shows because she's booked. Okay.
Yeah.
So my point of this thing, and the same thing with Colonel Sanders, that look, no matter what you are, this is an incredible country for opportunity. If you have something going that you think you do better, go for it. Don't let age be a barrier to your success. And those are two prime examples of people that are just in later life discovered themselves and are pursuing their dream.
Yeah, that's crazy,
right?
And also, if you thought about it, like the McDonald's guy, I can't remember his name, but I watched the movie, and it was a very inspiring movie because basically he went, and he was not the one who actually opened the first restaurant.
Yeah.
He just went to the brothers or like the partners, and he spoke to them. And he was like, "I'm going to turn this very small one-shop restaurant to a franchise all over the U.S."
Yeah.
And again, this is like way, I think, bigger than KFC. And it's not in every corner. It's like every block.
Yeah.
And it's crazy. And the McDonald's sign in the street and how he was trying to get it like a church and the cross and all of this story was very inspiring.
Yeah. Okay, yes, inspiring. However, this is a good opportunity to talk about when you maybe need a lawyer.
Yeah.
Because,
I agree.
As true as the story was and as inspirational it was for his success and how he realized that the real business was in owning real estate and owning, locations where basically the operators would lease from him the stores and all that. But the realities are the McDonald's founders got left behind. Right?
Yeah, I agree.
So
I feel so sad about this. In the movie.
Yeah. And I think that the problem with that is that, they maybe didn't hire the right lawyers representing them,
Right.
I do a lot of founders agreements and, and I work in that area of space.
So what do you think, if let's reimagine this. Now, the McDonald's guy who actually went to those founders and he went to them and he asked them to sign the contract, whatever, to get this franchise started. If they hired you as their attorney, what would you have done differently to protect them? But just in general terms.
The first thing that people have to understand is that, look, no matter how well you feel a handshake is, it's just a handshake.
Right.
And, you have to be mindful that you have to worry because a lot of people think, well, if I hire my lawyer, it's going to get kind of, a defensive posture to the guy that's looking to acquire my business and so forth.
Yeah.
So I think that, I think that's the first thing they have to realize. No, you need to be represented. You need to be represented because you cannot protect yourself from your own mistakes.
Yeah.
You cannot perceive what could possibly happen as a result of this, right? So there's some basic, fundamental ideas that have already been laid out. For example, in the patent world, and even trademark world, a lot of things are, related to basically a royalty scheme, right? So yeah, you want to go ahead and put all the money into selling this product or service. I understand that. An investor, I appreciate that, your ability to market, redistribute everything. But you know what? I'm the creator and founder of this idea, so I deserve to have a slice of that pie, right? Not to be completely squeezed out. In the case of McDonald's particular, those poor guys, they literally were left with their single store. And the guy, as the story goes and the movie shows, the guys were left with basically the guy literally opened a competitive store across the street just to further squeeze them out.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm not going to get into here about,
No,
what
you're right.
ethics and what people should do and don't do
No,
morally
but
do.
they really needed a lawyer.
They needed a lawyer.
I think so. And watching that movie, I think everyone in the audience was left with the idea that it was so unfair for them. Like they put their effort, they put their passion into the sandwiches and the speed and all of that. Then just one guy passed by and just did all of that for the franchise.
He created the worldwide business, but he literally, in some people's mind, and I'm sure they would feel this way, the founders, they shortchanged them. They shortchanged them. And even though, there you go, I'm sure that whatever, Anyway, so I think that's an important thing. And I think that, also too, is that whenever you acquire businesses, you got to do your due diligence.
Okay. Can you tell me more about this? So if someone, like right now, let's say someone in Orlando, Florida, wants to acquire a business, what do they have to do? And can you walk me through the steps?
Sure. Yeah. So the first thing is, it's going to cost you money to figure out if you even want to acquire this business. So what you really need to think about is if you have the fundamental terms of your deal worked out, normally in letter of intent, or sometimes you could go straight to a contract if a business is not significant. Because what you really want is at least to have an idea that even if you haven't reached a firm agreement, that this person's not going to shop your deal around, right?
Okay.
Because you put an offer in front of somebody for X number of dollars, and they can say, oh yeah, I'm going to go back to the guy that I knew back in the day that maybe, would want to buy the business for that. And you just wasted your time, right? So businesses are offers for sale. There's a marketplace for all that. So you want to find the business, you want to lock it down so that when you're in contract, not the lawyer should be involved in the letter of intent, but when you contract a CPA and other people to help you with the due diligence, if there's real estate involved, you got to contract other people to help you figure out if there's any problems with the building, the structure, and so forth, that you're not just wasting your time and your money. You want to make sure that you're tied it down, right? So that's really pretty much, the first initial steps to the acquisition. The other thing is that, people in selling businesses, if they have a good CPA, they'll be honest about their numbers. If they don't, then the numbers are all over the place. The way they treat revenue.
So what made you laugh? Just a minute. Did you remember one specific client?
Yeah,
who messed it up?
Because sometimes, when people are withholding information, be wary, right? When people are withholding information, be wary because wait a minute. You publish certain numbers for last year, but this year you're not willing to give me the numbers. I thought the business is going great. Yeah, but we'll get around to that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So buyer beware of that stuff. The other thing is too, is that, we have an incredible, small business friendly tax system.
Okay.
In fact, there's some deductions, write-offs and everything. I mean, a lot of people, much to really the challenge of the IRS, use their businesses as their expense account, right?
Yeah.
And in doing that,
to write off the expenses.
Write off the expenses that are related and not related to their business, whatever. It's a mishmash. But it becomes a clouded forest of trying to figure out what really is the expense of running this business.
Yeah.
So normally I partner up with good accountants, CPAs to help weed all that out and really figure out if the business is making the profit or the owner's benefits. That basically my client or our respective client would count on saying, okay, you told me you're making $250,000 take home a year. You've been able to verify that or not. Or $2.5 million. When you get a bigger numbers, companies are a little more organized about themselves. The bigger the size, the better they are.
Of course.
Accounting books. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I actually read something very interesting the other day, which is usually rich people get richer by using lawyers when it comes to businesses and loans and stuff. Like, for
Yeah.
example, they would, if someone has stocks, for example, they would actually use the stocks as a collateral to get a loan from a bank, and basically deduct this loan as a loan from the taxes and so on as expenses, because it's in the negative, not the positive. It's not an income. And by the way, and towards the end of the whole thing, he would be or she would be much better off compared to someone else who sells the stocks, because if you sold the stocks, for example, you would be having capital tax and all of this. So it's just like the way they handle things is different, and that's one of the reasons. Kind of like the saying goes, rich people get richer, because most of the time they actually go to an attorney who specializes in business, or let's say tax or whatever, and they advise them to do this, and they just get richer doing so.
Well, I think, if you look at it from, let's say, an automobile point of view, let's say comparing, the idea, the capital world is what helps you put the components together to finance the building of that vehicle, putting the components together. Banks and lending is the oil that
Wow.
that fuels that.
Yeah,
fuels
that's a
that car.
very good example
Yeah.
here.
Yeah, and in so doing, and the relative costs of borrowing for what a business can generate, because most businesses, if they have anything going for them, anything going on, they're going to be working on 30 to 50 to 60% margins after expenses
Yeah.
on their products they sell.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes our research and development, some upfront stuff that maybe in the beginning they're not making as much of a margin, or they have to reinvest their capital to get there. But at the end of the day, their product should be making minimum 30 to 60%, depending on the industry, right? So when you're borrowing at 6%,
Yeah.
that is really cheap for the cost that you would have to maybe, reach out and get more investors involved. And all of a sudden now, there's plenty of businesses out there that are like the owner, even though he's founded doing all the work, maybe he's down to 20% equity. And that's fine if that capital is necessary to grow the business. But if you could have gotten it via loans, that probably would have been a better vehicle, as long as you had the cash flow to substantiate that. So it's a question of cash flow.
Yeah.
Because the VC funds, venture capital funds, also say, okay, we understand Amazon, that it's going to be 10 years before you turn a profit, whatever, right?
Yeah.
And you need to get to that critical point of growth where you could have so much of a presence in the marketplace that we're going to put money in your business. So hence, that's what you got. You got a guy like Jeff Bezos, 20% owner of the business, but borrowing money was not an option because the debt cost of carrying that 6% debt was not feasible. He had to keep capitalizing his business to the point where that money was necessary to grow, to establish these 1 million square foot facilities and all the stuff we've talked about before, computers and robots, all this stuff that costs a lot of money. So the VCs are still taking the risk on him.
So can you, because maybe some people are not familiar with the term venture capital, what distinguishes like VC firms from other firms or investors in general? Like, what's the difference?
Well, there are people that basically, let's say that you want to purchase a shopping center, right? And then there's a historical number of tenants in there, and they pay X number of dollars per month, and that turns out to annual revenue minus expenses. And so the investors basically say, okay, we'll put up 80% of the cost, or let's say, 40% of the cost. The bank will put up 60% of the cost, and they'll cash flow. And then the investors will get their recurring fixed coupon rate of return as long as the tenants, stay in place. Cause you have anchor tenants, national tenants, depends on the mall. So that's a traditional investor model. And that can apply to a lot of industries and a lot of things. When venture capital comes in, it's like, hey, I invented Bitcoin. What do you think? Like, you want to put money into that? And then you tell a VC fund, you say, what is Bitcoin? That's when That's when venture capital start, right? When you have a new idea, a new concept, or something that maybe does not have a market presence yet, and then these guys are saying, you know what, you're right. There'll be a need for your product or service in the marketplace. We'll roll the dice on you.
So if they bought like enough shares, would they have any kind of control over the company?
Well, you see, it all depends. So in other words, you could have basically profit distributions and have 80% Jeff Bezos, 80% of the profits going to the VC funds or to people like you, me, and the VC funds, then 80%. But he's protected himself as the CEO of the company to still steer that ship. He's still the captain.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying? So negotiating founders agreements, captain agreements, and things like that, where I say captain generic sense, but leadership agreements where basically people, executive agreements where they kind of control the direction of the ship, even though they don't own it anymore, or they're not in control and voting shares, is what really that's important. And that's really, how do you protect the integrity of the future of your business? Is by negotiating these contracts.
Yeah.
Because,
and you said before, like due diligence is one of the steps that is necessary.
Yeah.
It's actually funny because when I started practicing law, the first thing I did was corporate. And I was sent to a company, like a larger company was actually doing an acquisition, and I was doing due diligence and looking at all the contracts at the other company and so on. They were super scared, like they were shaking and stuff like that because I was just representing the other company, and I was taking a look at all the legal paperwork for the small company that's going to be acquired. And then later on, funny enough, when I was at NYU Law, the guy who invented the poison pill was an adjunct law professor at the same time there.
Wow.
So, and I learned later on that the poison pill is basically a method that is used by some people in the business world to just stop yourself from being acquired if you're like a small company. Can you tell me more about like the whole thing about this poison pill?
Yeah. So in effect, it's basically how to protect executives from being fired.
Okay.
And have a windfall contract where, hey, look, if you could try, if you try to throw me out, you're going to pay 10 times over what I'm worth or what my contract says. So it's effective like that. It's a huge financial burden on the company to try to get these executives to move on because somehow they think some MBA numbers cruncher that the VC fund may have could do a better job, or they have their own person that they like to place because somehow whatever they were convinced of that. So that's basically what it is. It's a protection of the executive and still remaining the captain of the ship and moving the trajectory of the company forward in the way that
that's very interesting because many people think that law does not have inventions, but it does actually. Like the techniques and methods and so on, and he actually invented this out of practice, not out of research.
Oh wow.
So he's still a partner, I think, at some big law firm in New York City. And one day he was representing some kind of company, and he tried this method, and it worked. So he invented the whole technique.
The concept.
Yes, exactly.
The technical provision.
And that was not only the first time that someone actually invented something in law, or what I call legal inventions. Like there are whole institutions that were actually invented by people. Like for example, but this is just briefly. A professor who immigrated, and he was here from Egypt. His name is Sharif Vasuni. He was a professor at DePaul University Law School, and he passed away a while ago. He kept writing and publishing about something back then. What he wanted to establish an international criminal court. Before the establishment of the International Criminal Court, like 40, 50 years.
In The Hague, before The Hague. Wow.
So the International Criminal Court was established to a large extent, maybe 95%, because of his writings about this topic for 40 years before that. Wow. And he was named the father of international criminal law across the U.S. and across the world, actually, because his ideas developed something that was never existing before him, which is the International Criminal Court. And he was actually nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize.
Wow.
But he didn't win eventually. So he was actually nominated and all of that, but eventually he didn't win.
Yeah.
But we actually have multiple legal inventions in the business world and other practice areas as well. But for now, immigration doesn't have that.
Talk about criminal stuff, I'm going to tell you that I'm just astounded over the years of stuff I run into, right? I think, when it comes to people buying businesses, people need to also do their own due diligence and get focused on these things. I'll give you an example of this case that I'm very familiar with, where these guys were selling their business. And the VC fund, they have protocols where they don't put money into businesses unless a top tier accounting firm does due diligence and confirms that the revenues and so forth are true and valid, right? Well, anyways, I don't know who they put on the job, but basically it looked like all the numbers were legit in terms of cash flow.
Okay.
The money that was rolling in and rolling out of the company. Lo and behold, when the VC fund comes in and takes control of the situation partner, they discover that the books have been cooked, or what they call cooking the books. The numbers were inflated, and then they didn't realize that while the accounting firm saw the numbers going in and out of the bank, the realities were that the flow of funds was there, but the actual clients were made up.
Wow.
40%. There's like there's a company that was booking $100 million a year.
Yeah.
40% was all baked, cooked. And it was so obvious, and nobody picked up on it. All they had to do was do a corporate search on the entities, because they all sounded like really good. They sounded like legit clients.
Yeah.
But 40% of the clients all had the same business address, which was one of the principal's home.
That's why.
I kid you not.
Actually, that's funny, because usually when someone approaches me in terms of immigration and they're like trying to invest, and they tell me like, I do have a business in the U.S., and then they provide their home address as the business. I'm like, do you have a business, or are you?
Yeah. No, but you could have your home address as a business, but the point is that.
But it's not going to be like a large company.
No,
business.
exactly,
Yeah.
and you're not going to have 5 of your 20, 30 top clients, or of your 20, be all with the same business address. They're supposed to non-related entities.
Yeah.
So the fact that the accounting firm didn't have the diligence to just basically look up, Google, and find out the street address to me is like astounding, right?
Yeah.
Long story short, those principals are now in jail. Okay. But the VC fund had to write off the entire investment.
Wow.
It was $60 million.
Yeah.
They had to write it off because the books were cooked.
So regarding numbers, what is the largest deal you've closed before in your practice? And just speak a little bit about it without getting into details because of confidentiality.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I mean, look, I've been involved in IPOs where companies have gone public, and I've been general counsel for those transactions. Morgan Stanley underwriting the deals, and like, I don't know, $1 billion cutting across the table for the closing and stuff like that. So those have been really interesting deals. So that would probably be like my biggest deal.
Yeah.
But some small deals. Look, I represent people across the board. Like I don't even know. Tell me, like.
So how can someone who doesn't have enough money establish or acquire a business?
All right. Well, so like, look. At the end of the day, going back to the banks are the oil that grease this engine. the banks, the leverage, and so forth. So they say hypothetically, I don't know. You could tell me a little more about your clients and what their needs are. But hey, look, you could acquire basically a company, that could be worth $500,000 with $200,000.
Wow.
How
do you do that?
How do you do that, right? How do you do that? So effectively, like what you do is like, if you're going to buy a business and somebody's repping and telling you the numbers work and so forth, then I think it's reasonable to expect a seller to give you back a portion of a note. If that seller really believes and can vouch for those numbers, he ought to be comfortable with taking some paper. It's called taking paper back, a promissory note, for a portion of that acquisition. The other part is, depending on your situation, if you're a U.S. national or basically a green card holder or whatever, you could apply for an SBA loan. Okay. That could make up the difference. Like, let's say you take $100,000 note from the seller, and then you take then you take out another $200,000 from the bank, and you're good. And your business, if it's operating at 30 to 60% margin, then you should be able to carry that debt while you try to figure out how to improve it. You may not be taking as much money home as the seller was, but you're literally buying that cash flow.
Yeah. So I was actually personally thinking about investing in some ventures before, but like if someone wants to invest in a business, can you tell me just like how to, like, those videos on YouTube, but very simple, in very simple terms, like what should we care about? Like what should we look for, not to fall like into a trap or something?
Yeah, I mean, look, we're talking about purchasing a business. I think it's fundamentally. So there's two kinds of types of business you could buy. You could buy what's called a street business, and that street business, being sold by like the pizzeria down the street, or you could buy national pizza franchise, right?
Yeah.
So, the idea is that you pay an upfront fee, but somehow the national franchise company's done their due diligence. They're going to tell you, yeah, we feel like these three corners in your city could easily work, and we'd like to be able to have you be there and establish, and we'll supply you let's say it's pizza, we'll supply you all the ingredients and the raw goods, and you just have to wait for the phone to ring because the deliveries will come, and that's the deal. That's a franchise, right? If you feel that you could do better, like you're a guy, right? Because that somehow you could make better pizza than the
one here.
Right.
Even though pizza is actually Italian invention. So
yeah.
But New York City pizza is actually better, in my opinion, in my personal opinion.
I was there. I can tell you. can tell you.
What did you try over there? Like Joe's Pizza?
I don't remember.
Or Ben's Pizza. I'm a New Yorker by nature. So
no, I know. As I told you, I was there last week with my daughter, and we were at some pizzeria at like 11 o'clock at night, and it was fantastic.
By the way, New Yorkers would actually kill over this. Like, like anyone who has been or stayed in New York for like over 5 years or whatever, even 2 years, you can't even imagine, would call themselves a New Yorker, and they would literally go into arguments and fights over New York City because it's the best place to live. It's the best place to do everything in life. But when it comes to pizza, I really tried a pizza back in Italy, and I tried a pizza from Joe's Pizza in New York City. And really, the New York pizza is much better.
Right.
So it's not really about like getting the same stuff and do it here, and it's going to be successful.
But what's really interesting about this? You think, oh, okay, well, New York. But New York pizza is not everywhere, and New York pizza needs to come. Like New York pizza needs to go to Orlando. Like we need some New York pizzas in Orlando, right?
I mean, we need everything, We
need everything in Orlando. No, but we have a lot of good stuff. But the point is that's what I'm trying to say. So opportunities lie within. Like not everything has to come from abroad. Things can come domestically. As a matter of fact, we might be bringing one soon. I have a client actually from New York. I was on the phone with 2 days ago.
Okay.
And I'm meeting with him, and he might be bringing some pizzerias to New York. So in his particular case, or anybody that, like, let's say, has a product or idea, the idea is to just do your studies, figure out where your clients are going to be calling from. Who are they going to be the late night people that are going to go buy your pizza in the middle of the night?
Right.
Because that's the New York thing, right?
Yeah.
Stand up is, the tradition of standing up and eating out, stand-up deli and not whatever.
And I think it's all about creating something that would be convenient for for people in general.
Right.
Like, and also monetizing it, because sometimes people create something of convenience but do not monetize, and it's not a business. So, for example, in many countries, you can actually get the shop that you're buying stuff from using your phone, whatever, to to deliver to your doorstep.
Right.
That was not in the U.S. until Uber made it possible.
Correct.
Uber Eats and DoorDash and all of that. But in the rest of the world, that was actually for free. It's like, you call someone, you buy like cheese and beer, whatever, and they would actually drop it off on your doorstep and get some tips, like $5 whatever, dollars or whatever, and that's it. And then they will leave, and that's it.
Yeah.
But Uber Eats now, but honestly, if we want to think about it, the drivers and the people who actually deliver get the least portion of it. So maybe they also, that's why I believe lately they have been accepted to do some unions and stuff like that, because they're workers and they need some kind of protection against like large companies. But like the company itself as an establishment, or someone who just established Uber Eats or Uber in general, thought about like a taxi and thought that, about the convenience of, no, I don't want to go into the street and keep waiting and keep waving my hand and say taxi or whatever. I'm just going to put it on my phone and schedule it for like 7 a.m. in the morning because I have a flight 2 hours after. And I'll just go down the stairs and see the car waiting for me. So it's the whole idea is about convenience. And the more we do things that is more convenient for people, I think the more business ideas we would have, just the execution matters a lot too, which I believe always needs a business attorney, I think.
Yeah. Look, I in that sense, I've always been old school. I like to go sit down in a restaurant and eat, but honestly, like my kids order for Uber Eats. And so, and all the time, and, they order great food because they want to sit at home and eat it. That's awesome. Great. But the thing is that like, so now the big thing is that ghost kitchens. So you got this one guy in New York who is like a big competitor in the restaurant business, but none of his concepts have storefronts.
Okay.
He's gone straight to ghost kitchens. He's like a Michelin chef, and he has over 18 concepts literally out of ghost kitchens. So he could share the kitchen with 2 or 3 different concepts, so the food won't get cross-affected by it. And he effectively selling this thing where people are like, look at a menu, and they think it's coming from a restaurant, but it's not. It's coming from a ghost kitchen from an industrial part of town.
Yeah.
And that's a big business. And that is also...
But can you do that like licensing wise?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Because ghost kitchens are all over. Already existing.
Because my sister was actually thinking about cooking and selling,
absolutely.
Some food.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And I could definitely help her with that. And I think that, the whole permitting process is a lot easier, a lot faster, because you're not dealing with certain things. Like if, for example, you're not dealing with liquor licenses, you're not dealing with, client relation things, whatever, things having to do with ADA, accessibility, disabled accessibility. Yeah. You just have to get a location that's industrial approved in the sanitary
and the hygiene and stuff.
All that. Yeah. And then you go for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So have it, give me a call.
No, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
But like usually whenever I'm walking past like restaurants, I see like A or B or C rating and stuff like that. How would they rate like kitchens and ghost kitchens like that?
People, well, people are rating the food. So if you go to Yelp, and they say, let's say the ghost kitchen is called...
No, I thought that was like by inspection, by food inspection.
Oh, well, that part, you have to skip that part.
Yeah.
But I'm talking about when people are rating on Yelp, the quality of the food, their experience, 5 stars, whatever. Yeah. They're saying the food is great. Can't comment on the service. Well, they could comment on the driver and the delivery, right?
Yeah.
The delivery.
Yeah.
I think, I don't know if they're now trying to come up with little robots that deliver...
Did you see that in Miami?
Yeah.
It's happening right now, actually.
It's happening.
Last time I was like in Miami a couple of months ago, and it was over a weekend, and I remember like walking the street, and I saw like something running towards me, and I was like, what the hell? Seriously, I was like, what is that? And it's like a little robot, and you can actually watch YouTube videos on it. It's a new company, and it has been in Miami for the past year.
Wow.
And it delivers food from the restaurant to your doorstep. And it runs, and it's actually, I thought about it, maybe it's going to run into some people. And I watched some funny videos because people try to actually tease the robot, and it's like, just keep standing.
Give me the food,
yeah,
right?
keep standing.
It's for me. It's for me.
Yeah, and it's like, for me, this is for, and sometimes like people would actually try to block the robot from moving forward. And what I watched on YouTube was that some people are actually controlling it, and they can speak through the robot, and so it's controlling itself. It's autonomous. But if they needed to intervene in the whole process, they would actually intervene and say to the people, just step aside, please, because this robot has to deliver some food to this address, and it's like 4 or 5 robots in the street, in the same street. It's usually South Beach, Miami, Miami Beach.
Wow.
So,
Share that with you. I'd love to see that.
Yeah.
It's funny because I was in a Japanese sushi place the other day here in Orlando, and it was crazy because I've sat in restaurants before, both here and in different places and in Tokyo actually, where they have the plates on conveyor belts. And what was really interesting about this place is that the bill was calculated because every time you took a plate, you literally, when you're done, you put it into a slot, and somehow, based on everything's priced the same, so you had 2 pieces of sushi, everything's priced the same. Other was excellent sushi. Yeah. A big line conveyor belt, like 200 people sitting there. Anyways, long story. And so it figures out the price. But the kicker was there was no waitress. A robot brought me the bill.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow.
I was actually in a restaurant back in Charlottesville, Virginia, a couple of years ago. And it's a ramen restaurant. And there's no one in there. It's like just one person who you would talk to. And then afterwards, you would see that a robot is coming to you with a smiley face and stuff like that, and dropping the food. And it's like, of course it's not like as developed as Optimus and those robots that are coming out soon. It's just like it's like a card basically, and it has the food on it. You just have to grab your bowl and put it in front of you. And it smiles at you, and sometimes it speaks. You can speak to it and like, can you please bring me some fork? And it would go back, and the human would actually put the fork on it. And it would run back to you, and you would pick up the fork and so on, which is crazy.
Yeah, I just thought about it. Like, what are they going to do? Like, there's no tips on no taxes on tips of $25,000 presumably this year. And I'm like thinking, well, what happened to the robot tips? Like, do they have to file separate returns or what? Like, a robot has to file a return because maybe the robot's making more money because they're kind of curious and people tip the robots.
But I mean, like, they are like reduced business expense because robots are not gonna call their hotline and try to get. They're not gonna call the lawyers and say discrimination. And I'm underpaid here.
For now.
Who knows?
They're getting very smart.
Yeah.
But anyways, But no, I think. Look, I think that when it comes to clients, basically, I mean, there's all kinds of businesses available in the marketplace. People don't understand that it may not be the same in numbers, but just like you can look up on realtor.com or Zillow, homes for sale and so forth, and find homes that you desire to rent or to purchase. It's the same thing on business. There are marketplaces for businesses and people can find. And the most important thing is that they need to understand is that when they find a business that's interesting to them, because they literally can search it by categories and types and so forth. I mean,
so can you recommend some websites that we?
Yeah. I mean, I could usually Biz by Sell.
Okay,
is a good one because it has a general, like it covers most of the United States and it covers, and
it's legit. It's just like it's legit. You just have to just
very
check
legit,
what it.
Very legit.
Okay.
And then there are some merger and acquisition websites that you have to subscribe for that gives you bigger size businesses. But yeah, there are marketplaces for all kinds of businesses. So people can find legitimate businesses, and normally they're vetted because if there's a broker working, like just like a realtor broker, there's a business broker associated with that, and they're vetted. They know the numbers are generally very accurate, and so you could like identify things like you could see yourself. Hey, like, hey, I'm thinking I'm kind of tired of what I'm doing now, but I think I could see myself doing something else, and I'm thinking like this or that. Like, I'm looking at these pictures here of like the cars and the detailing, and I'm thinking, well, like, oh, I don't know, maybe I'm a connoisseur of cars, and maybe I want to retrofit cars.
Yeah.
You could literally find, shops that do that are for sale, that literally specialize in customizing cars.
Yeah. So, if I asked you, what would be safest for investment? Would it be like a real estate or a business? And if it's a business, which type of business? Like sometimes I try to read and do my homework when it comes to this, and different websites say different things. Basically, like one website would tell you opening like a laundromat would actually be the safest business, which is proven to be the most safe, whatever. Another website would tell you like you can buy vending machines and make $500 out of each, and crazy ideas. But like from your experience, would it be? Can you tell me more can you tell me more about the whole thing about like businesses and real estate and which one is the safest path and so on?
Yeah, I think. Look, I think that
not as a financial advice, we're not talking.
No, but I think people are thinking like, okay, well, what's your motive? Like, what do you need? Like, I was talking to a guy today, like, he's already retired, he's set, and he's just looking for security, right? So we're looking at some things that are just like, buying real estate that's already, for example, that there's an operating gas station. It's a regional brand. The gas station, and that they would just be his tenants, and they would just pay. And I mean, these are big ticket items at gas stations, but still, it's like, what he could do with that money, if he were like, let's say, more younger and more entrepreneur, high risk taker, might be greater. But he's looking for security, right?
Yeah.
So some of these things, like, like you have to think about like, what's your risk factor? Like, what are you really wanting to do?
And of course, high risk is equal high profit.
Right. Yeah. And also sweat, right? Because some businesses require a greater involvement in your part. So like this guy who buys the land, it's already a gas station. They pay, I do all the negotiations on the terms, make sure everything's due diligence, extremely important. And we verify the information, make sure everything's the rents and everything. And that's it. And he walks away, and every month he gets his check in the mail or receipt. Fantastic. But that business will probably, would be a smaller margin return on investment than a business, let's say, that could cost you this much. But let's say that you're in the car detailing business, and you paint, you reconfigure, you customize, you create custom seats and stuff like that. It's a risky business, but the margins are going to be greater, right?
Yeah,
because hey, if you get a couple basketball players to redo their cars, they're going to be like, oh yeah, man, like, I don't know, a couple $100,000 just for new seats. But they maybe they'll have the LeBron James logo on them, and LeBron will pay, I don't know. Exactly for the seats. So, but that's a business where maybe your passion is there, and you can see yourself running that kind of business.
That brings us back to actually the Chobani story, the yogurt. Because the guy, his name was Hamdi, and he was from Turkey, and he, as I said, he just loved his Turkish yogurt so much that he was so passionate about it.
Yeah.
And by the way, he actually reserved 10% of the whole thing for refugees as employees in his companies. So he wanted to give back so much because he was an immigrant at that time, and he went through the whole thing and the whole process. And of course, the 90% would be like American workers. And this is one of the examples actually where someone actually opened a factory. We spoke about this a couple of episodes ago. And sometimes we think about this as product versus like a service and all of this, but like even with products, people can bring in some new products and still hire too many American workers and legal permanent residents and so on.
Yeah. No, I think that's the thing, is that you have to be willing to take a lot of risk, I guess, a certain way, but also you have to be very perceptive of needs and what's happening. It's almost like you have to have if you feel you have a sense of the future, there's a reason why you feel that way. You know.
You know what's happening right now? Actually, thinking about this, what you're talking about, was just like recently opened. It's called a dosho. So the dosho is a Middle Eastern restaurant, and the guy just established like the first shop. I believe it was here in Orlando, Florida.
Yeah.
And now he has like what 15, 20 shops. It's like crazy. He became a franchise in 6 months. And
Wow.
last time I actually entered this restaurant, I expected to see like Middle Eastern people. I didn't see any Middle Eastern people.
Yeah.
Like just
No,
it's
because-
like a mix of everyone else. And everyone loves it so much because it offers some healthy food.
Healthy food, right?
So it's like half
Yeah,
grilled
yeah,
chicken, and it's just like pure protein and stuff like that, and salad and like Greek salad and Greek food and stuff
Right,
like
yeah.
that. So and they also offer some kind of like I don't know what do you call it in English, but basically in Arabic it's just like some kind of pizza, but it's not a pizza, and it has the toppings inside of it, and you eat. We call it fatir. So this is just
wow.
the only invention. It's like Eastern.
Well, I'll have to try
stuff.
that. I have to
Yeah.
try that.
So it tastes so good.
It's like a calzone from the Middle East.
Yeah,
basically. It's
exactly.
the Middle East. That's
and
interesting.
it tastes amazing. And everyone is going there for this
Yeah,
to
yeah.
taste it
Oh,
and so
I'll
on.
have to try that.
And he was selling like a new franchise restaurant and so on.
Yeah.
And everyone was like sending me this, like maybe you should buy this. I was like, well, I'm not that rich anyway, you know. But like imagine someone who just started something like 7 months ago or whatever, and it
Yes,
went
20
so viral.
stores. Wow.
I think right now it's like 10 up to 15.
Wow, that's
I
great.
stopped,
That's
I stopped
amazing.
counting.
Congrats to that. Yeah.
So I have no relationship whatsoever with
Yeah,
the
yeah.
guy. I'm just
Yeah, no,
it's
but-
an
but-
interesting
but-
story.
But that's the point, because the Middle Eastern,
Cuisine,
diet is
yeah.
trending. So somebody takes advantage of that and sees the opportunity and jumps right on it.
It's like the
Don't
Dubai
hesitate-
chocolate. It's like the Dubai chocolate went crazy. It was,
Yeah.
you know, so she was a wife and she was pregnant and she was trying stuff and she put like some pistachio inside the chocolate and her husband loved it.
Yeah.
So he told her, wow, that's nice. She thought it would be a good business idea to sell the Dubai chocolate. And she tried and she failed multiple times. And then she found an influencer who's very famous.
Right.
And that influencer ate the chocolate and it was like crunchy and stuff on a reel on Instagram. And everyone went crazy worldwide. It became like a frenzy, and everyone went, and it's like a hashtag Dubai chocolate, and it was like millions of views, and she became like a millionaire, right? Like right off the
Yeah,
bat.
yeah.
It's
I mean,
crazy
look,
stuff.
this is what it's about, right? It's about ingenuity, creativity, and we're gonna have plenty of time to talk about. I think one of the topics I'd like to talk about, and maybe have a guest invited, is talk about branding. What it takes to brand a product or service, because a lot of momentum is about branding, where you get influencers to subscribe to your idea, buy your product, like your product, identify your product. And that's what it's really become. It's no longer TV commercials on the networks. It's about influencers, saying, validating what you have to offer. So I think that's really an interesting thing. I mean, there's so many things happening, and everything's evolving very quickly. And I love to talk about these evolutionary things, but
I think everyone has. So many people ask, like, and it's very interesting actually, how to be rich and how to be whatever. In the past, I used to think about it in terms of like, it's just like some people are born rich, some people aren't, and stuff like that. But this is not true. Everyone who is on this earth living, whoever has an idea and can actually implement this idea, even if they failed once, twice, whatever, would end up becoming rich. And there's no barrier, especially here. I mean, if you're back in Africa, in specific countries, nothing you can do would actually matter, because this is how this is how it is. Nothing you can do is actually mattering. So, of course, some countries like Egypt is very successful. Some people are actually billionaires out of there. They would be much richer than people living here. But I'm talking about like very poor countries, and it's like nothing you can do would matter. But here in the US, if anyone has any idea and just wants to implement it and went ahead and had the grit and kept going and going after failure, they would end up being successful, and probably they would end up being rich. Like this guy Hamdi, he established the Chobani's yogurt, and Sergey, he established like he was a co-founder of WhatsApp, and multiple people as well. So it's just the way things are. Just you just have to kickstart it, and probably going to be successful.
Absolutely, and that's the whole thing. And it's not always about the product or service you're offering, is about maybe improving it. I got so many stories, but, and I maybe, I don't know if we like maybe conclude on this, what I'll tell you, because it's, we talked at the other end of the spectrum, elderly people taking off and stuff like that. Yeah. But, even young people have great ideas. So I have a friend of mine, his daughter was in college, and, she, like you go to college, you go to the stores and you see the stuff like sweaters and whatever it is that the school's promoting, the identity crisis. And, and these girls were like, they're like, they want to look different,
Yeah.
And there's so they decided to just sketch up some ideas about what the cuts of the brands would be where their university logo would be.
Yeah.
And they went to the university and said, hey, look, we like to manufacture these. And lo and behold, right now they are selling their products in 60 universities across the country.
Wow!
Because girls want to look prettier.
Exactly.
They don't want to wear just like like. So again, this is what I'm trying to say. How can you improve something that's there already?
They always say, if you want to be rich, target a female audience, because they love, especially when it comes to clothes. Right. Because we men, like if you watch like Mark Zuckerberg, he's wearing the same shirt every day. Who's gonna sell out of it? Like you're not gonna be rich selling to guys probably.
Well,
so
I don't
just
know.
have to focus.
I have my own different opinion about that. We'll talk about that some other day.
Just one correction: Sergey was the co-founder of Google, not WhatsApp.
Not WhatsApp.
But WhatsApp was another immigrant. So next episode probably we should speak about this.
Yeah.
But for now, I think it's a good moment to conclude about this business information that we got today and all of the stories that we've shared.
Well, it's always fun. I mean, talking to you, because I think we have a lot of on the ground and real experiences that we had basically some of the things that we just talked about literally happened between Monday and today, Friday, right? And so these are real life experiences. We have clients, all diverse clients that gives us these things, and we advise them on and all this stuff. But I just want to tell the people that are watching, please subscribe, because it's important to us to keep you guys engaged and keep you informing you of how to prosper and how to think about America as a land of opportunity and what you could do. And we hope very soon to have basically an American Dream series where we talk about people that have established themselves here in this country and have grown and made something out of nothing. And that we're really interesting people that we're going to share with you. So stay tuned for that.
Starting with me. So you have to start with me.
There you go. Right. Exactly.
Okay. No, I'm joking.
Exactly.
I'm joking.
No, but it's true. It's true. It's true. Like, we have to think about us as professionals.
Don't worry about
professionals.
Okay.
Well, anyways, welcome to Lawyers Uncensored. We look forward to seeing you next time, and stay tuned. And that's it.